And so Socrates says something very interesting. Now remember, if you have a great looking body, that's a great amount of power you have. Imagine it's summertime or around the lake. There's this man, six pack, great looking face, chiseled jaw, high cheekbones, nice big blue eyes like a cow, long hair, tall, handsome. That's a great amount of power. Everywhere you go, they look at you. And they want your autograph. Maybe they want to sleep with you, have a conversation with you. So Socrates says, let us go to the gym and take a look at this man. But let us go and have a conversation with him to see whether or not his soul is as beautiful as his body. Now imagine Socrates goes to this man and has a chat with him and comes to realize he is hollow. Well, how do you remove his identity from his physical body? And how do you inspire him to look at his soul? Well, if you have a man who's been attached to his body and physical looks for the past 20 years, you have 20 years of addiction. Socrates needs to be profoundly inspiring, profoundly charismatic, profoundly magnetic to have this man no longer look at himself and identify with his body, but rather with his mind and his soul. That's a tough thing to do. So when you're confused, what happens is you find yourself quite unattractive in all sorts of ways. You're not ready for marriage, you're not ready for a relationship, you're just taking classes not knowing exactly what you want to do, you hang out with anyone, you're like a prostitute, not just in body and mind and emotions and soul. There's no stability to you, no one can depend on you. You can't even depend on you, you change all the time. And the good thing about confusion is that you're open to possibilities. So how do you remove power from someone? Depends how long they've been addicted to the power. It's not just about power, it's also what power brings in. You have the strong called the power. The strong has roots in your soul. And out of the strong, you have all these branches. So not only you're attached to and addicted to the roots, but also the trunk and all the branches. And God forbid if there are leaves and fruits. So it's nearly impossible. And I always go back to this particular narrative, which is some 2,000 years ago, and let's just say Jesus Christ actually had a factual existence. He actually lived. 2,000 years ago, there was no internet. There was no capitalism as we know it. We didn't have urbanism. There was no industrial revolution. There was no Sigmund Freud. There was no divorce. There was no porn. Okay? People really, for the most part, were very clean on the interior. The only thing they knew was about religion. That is what governed their lives. And yet you have a man like the Buddha, you have a man like Muhammad, you have a man like Lao Tzu. He works with these simple people, but they can't get ahead. They can't be educated. They're attached to beliefs. Beliefs create power. Beliefs create meaning. Beliefs create identity. And even though Jesus says, listen, why don't you go inside and find the kingdom of God? The guy says, no, I have the temple. Why the hell would I want to go within and look for the kingdom of God when I can go to the synagogue on a Saturday? It's much easier. So any kind of power, its removal is enormously difficult, if not altogether impossible. Anyone else? What was the thing? Giving up. Well, yeah.
Come back to my question.
Let's go back to Gilgamesh for a few minutes. and the idea of giving up. I have no doubt that when Gilgamesh was having physical intimacy with other people, maybe his mom, maybe his dad, maybe his neighbors would tell him a few things. But the temptation is far too great. You have power, and there is no self-awareness. Now remember what I mean by self-awareness. Any kind of awareness is good. You can be aware of your body. You could be aware of the play of emotions. You could be aware of your thoughts. Any of them is good. The only thing that Gilgamesh is aware of is when I see a nice looking woman, I become aware that I want to sleep with them. There is no doubt. In other words, there is no reflection. That's the only thing he's aware of. There are these pleasures I want to have in my life. When I see the opportunity, I will take advantage. Okay? Now, one of the things about giving up which makes it really, really an easy task is the following. Gilgamesh has a lot of power. People fear him. He doesn't doubt. He doesn't think. And because he has power, he just rams through everything. He encounters a man, an Enkidu. He doesn't know why. He doesn't know how. But he feels something. You know, it's like, let's just say you have really enjoyed our conversation tonight, and now you go home and your companion is waiting for you. And you're filled with all these emotions, and they are intense, and you want to talk about them. And your man or your woman looks at you and says, you want to watch a movie? You say, yeah, I want to watch a movie. What kind of movie? I don't know, some comedy movie. Yuck. I want to watch something serious. You want to watch like American History X? You say to him, no. How about The Exorcism of Emily Rose? Oh, no. How about Malcolm X? No. But what the hell do you want to watch? You want to watch like, I don't know, Cat in the Hat? And what you encounter is, all of a sudden, your companion is used to you going home and the both of you sitting and watching something very casual, something very cheesy. But all of a sudden, you go home and you want something that has depth, and your companion is not ready for that. So Gilgamesh feels something. He doesn't know why he feels a certain way. All he knows that he wants to get rid of the image of Enkidu that's now inside him, but he can't. So they begin to wrestle. He can't give up. He can't overlook the fact that this man's presence is on his inside and his interior and his psychology. And so they wrestle and they wrestle and they wrestle until Gilgamesh comes to realize the only thing he really wants to do is be around this man. In his case, giving up becomes passive. He's no longer interested in women. He's no longer interested in pushing his people around. The only thing he's interested in is being a servant to Enkidu. Now, if someone was to go to Gilgamesh and ask, well, how did you get to this point where you've just simply completely given up on having sex, on drinking, on smoking? Gilgamesh would say, they're just no longer interesting. They're no longer interesting because Enkidu has become the most interesting component in his life. That's the best way of giving up. That you find someone who has a great amount of depth. Go home and read the dialogues of Plato. I mean, just the way, there are lots of like fallacies in the book, the way Socrates has conversations, but the way he approaches people, the way he talks to them, the way he asks questions, the way he does the follow-up, it's amazing. And if you're interested and you've been captivated, you realize you go home and you look at your companion, your friends, and you say, so what should we talk about? What movie should we see? And then you realize you keep doing follow-ups. And then what? And then what? And then what? And all of a sudden your friends say, you know, Kendra, you're just messing this up. We came here to have fun. But your questions, your relentless questions, bring about all these other questions, and we're no longer having fun. Maybe you should just go home alone. One of the books that may speak to this, some of you may enjoy it, is called The Awakened Dreams. It's a book, it's about this kid, Ahmad Raji, very much like all of us in this class, confused, pathetic. One day he goes to work and he has this strange feeling on the inside. He's walking home and he passes by the cemetery that's next to his house, which he's passed plenty of times. But this time around, he says, maybe I should go to the cemetery and walk around a little bit. Maybe the strange feeling will go away. رو به گورستان دمی خاموش نشین آن خاموشان سخنگو را ببین. When you go to the cemetery, you'll hear the loudest voice in the cemetery. That you will look at the tombstones and you will say, one day soon I will end up like this person. I will be forgotten. So while I'm alive, what the hell should I do? I mean, this is a daunting question. And one of the things you need to understand about Gilgamesh and why he's so restless is he tells his mom on a daily basis, I don't want to be forgotten. I don't think you guys understand. Imagine you're in a relationship and you wake up in the morning after 2 or 3 years of being with someone. He sends you a text. Bye. That's it? Yeah, bye. Why? You smell. I don't want to be around you. Say, okay. Now, you can't sleep. You can't rest. Joy has departed from your life. And you're by the lake, you're sitting crying, and from a distance you see him or you see her. And they have another person's hand in their hand. You say, really? We were together for 5 years. How could he be holding hands with another human being? Simple. You have been forgotten. Do you know how devastating it is to live 50, 60, 70 years? And then the only thing that will remain of you is a picture that once in a while someone will take a look at, and once in a while someone will tell a story about. Gilgamesh is fully aware of mortality. That how do you live a life where you won't be forgotten? No one is ever going to forget the name Plato, or Mahatma Gandhi, or Malcolm X, or Che Guevara. There is something about certain lives that are eternal, immortal. And that is what Gilgamesh wants. Gilgamesh is greedy. He wants immortality. I think he was Lebanese, Khalil Gibran. He has, for those of you who like, poetry, you should check him out. Go online, just Google his name, Khalil Gibran, and read some of his writings. They're really just beautiful. There are some people who walk the shore. The waves come and the waves go, and their footprints, they're completely gone. It's as if they have never walked the shore. Some footprints, on the other hand, the waves come and go, the footprints remain. And that is a sort of a footprint that Gilgamesh wants. Now, you need to understand, this is the 21st century, 2023. Gilgamesh lived maybe 5, maybe 6, maybe 10,000 years ago. We speak about him. A man who lived some 10,000 years ago, tonight we speak of him. Why? Because he has lived a life worthy of thinking about and talking about. So, if you can find something that has depth, you don't even have to give up. It just falls from you. If that's a little too difficult to grasp, think of it this way. You have an orange tree in the backyard. The oranges are green. Maybe they're a little orange too. And so you want to pull one and eat one, but they are stuck tightly to the branch. And you pull and you pull and you pull, the branch breaks. You get the orange, you peel it, and you realize it's just not edible. You throw it away. Then your mom tells you, just wait. And you wait and you wait and you wait. And now it's like, I don't know, September, and you look at the tree, and all the oranges look orange. They look good. And then you just look at one, and it just falls. There is no effort on your part. It just falls. The orange simply gives up without any effort. So for those of you in this class who are making a lot of effort to get rid of a certain trauma, a certain psychological narrative that bothers you from time to time, you can't do it. It's impossible. The more you try, the thicker the trunk will get. If on the other hand you find something that is profoundly valuable, like Dr. Freud, or Dr. Jung, or Dr. Jordan Peterson, or maybe Dr. Buddha, the idea of sympathy is interesting. Sympathy, empathy, compassion, they're interesting because they go through all these different stages. Let me kind of invite you to look at the life of the Buddha. I'm not actually sure if he actually existed, but it doesn't really matter. There comes a point where this young 19, 20-year-old kid looks at his life and he says, it's trash. Well, you're talking about 3,000 years ago in a culture where no one walks away from the parents, walks away from a princely kingdom, walks away from a wife, walks away from a son. Is he without empathy? Is he without sympathy? Is he without compassion? He has now found a goal. He has now found a desire that makes all the other desires irrelevant. He doesn't care how his son is going to feel. He doesn't care how his wife is going to feel. He doesn't care how his parents are going to shame and embarrass him. He doesn't care about those things. So, is it possible that you may, at this stage, for example, you know, it's kind of like you go to College Avenue, you park your car, say, on Telegraph somewhere, Telegraph and Dwight, and then you say you're going to walk to campus. And that particular street is filled with just trash, all kinds of trash. So you see a young hippie who says, I'm wise, you give him $10. You see another young hippie who says, I'm really, really wise, you give him $5. You see another hippie who says, I'm really, really wise, you give him $2. And you sympathize with them. You know, they've given up on their parents and society. They refuse to be enculturated, socialized in the way that you and I are. And they're rebellious. They want to be authentic. By the time you get to the fourth and the fifth one, you actually don't care. Once you begin to understand a few things, you only sympathize and empathize and exercise compassion very selectively, and rightly so, and you should. Because if you look at compassion and sympathy, empathy as the human body, for example, well, do you just want to sleep around for people who don't really care for you? I mean, you can do it for fun, there's nothing wrong with that. But there comes a point where you say, it's my body. I just don't want to give it to just anyone. And imagine compassion to be like that, sympathy to be like that. You just don't want to give it to anyone. Do you grow callous? Absolutely. Is it good? Definitely. It's your time, it's your life, it's your energy. Be selective. Any other questions before we do Gilgamesh, which will make all of you fall asleep? No one? Going once? Okay. Yeah. I'm sorry? What is Gilgamesh? No, Gilgamesh is a life story of a man.
The way you said it sounds like a lullaby, or it sounds go back to Gilgamesh, like an introduction. Sounds exciting, go to sleep, but it's not too comforting.
Well, yeah, religious ideas, any good ideas are never comforting. They're not meant to comfort you, they're meant to sting you. Now, so for those of you who have forgotten the story, I'm just going to give you a 5-minute repeat. You have a guy, he's partly God, partly divine, and partly mortal. Well, sometimes he writes essays for a grade, sometimes he writes essays because he's creative and is inspired. And he lives in two very, very different worlds. And when he is inspired, he allows the inspiration to simply do what it does through him. When he writes an essay for a grade, he catches himself sometimes perhaps because he says, it was just a minute ago I wrote through inspiration. Now I write because I fear my future. And so you have a guy who has a good amount of conflict within. He's also very fearful of the fact that he soon will die and he soon will be forgotten. When this class is over, I will not remember a single one of you. You will most likely not remember me either. Maybe your image will linger around a week or 2 or 3, but eventually you will be forgotten. And that should really, really, really frighten you. That you and I have sat in this class for about 6 weeks. It's okay, just do it. There you go. That I really haven't made or left an impression, and that impression hasn't really taken roots inside you, and you haven't left any impression, and what little impression you've made, it hasn't taken roots. So both you and I eventually disappear. So Gilgamesh is always wanting to do something that will make him immortal, but he's looking for the wrong things. He chases the wrong things. Until, of course, he runs into this man named Enkidu, a teacher. Enkidu gives him a taste of something he can't explain or describe. All he knows is that his intuition tells him, follow this man. Wherever he goes, do what he asks, whatever he wants, just provide it for him. One day, of course, Gilgamesh goes home, finds Enkidu on his bed, and Enkidu is crying. And Gilgamesh asks, what up? What's wrong with you? He says, you know, when I lived in the forest, I would walk with the animals, I would talk with the animals. I didn't have to be clothed. I would be innocent. I would be free. I would have a use for my body. City life, what do people do? They get up in the morning after being on bed for 8 hours, then they get themselves on a bike or a car or a bus, they sit for another 5 hours, then they come to a class, they sit for another 10 hours, then go to work, they sit for another 10 hours. Human body in city life becomes completely useless. And the sort of things that people pursue, they're also useless. And it's all because of that woman with whom I slept. She caused this for me. Had I had never encountered Shamat, I would still be in the forest, live my innocent, pure life. Gilgamesh looks at him and says, I will find you something to do to distract you from thinking and feeling this way. Point being, almost all of us in this class, once in a while, we have this feeling that our life really is quite a waste. We sit alone, maybe we cry, maybe we have a companion who says, okay, let's do A, B, C, D. But the truth is we catch something about who and what we are and who and what we become. And we don't like it. Okay? And very much like Gilgamesh, who loves Enkidu, but can't see Enkidu be in pain, creates a distraction. The distraction is the both of them, they go into a forest, they fight a monster, they come back. But because Enkidu has offended the gods, now one of the things you need to understand about good teachers, they are what we call autonomous, a law unto themselves. They don't need to read books. They don't need to obey the 10 Commandments. They are the living scriptures. They write the laws that are good for them. They are the child of their own time. Enkidu does not have any need for any god to tell him what to do, how to be, or how not to be. Okay? Now, there is a goddess up there whose name is Ishtar. She is profoundly offended by Enkidu's behavior. She goes to her father and says, I was offended by a scumbag down there on earth. Either kill him or kill Gilgamesh. Someone who remembers who he or she is does not need reminding. Enkidu can die. Enkidu was born only for Gilgamesh. Enkidu walks into the life of Gilgamesh so that Gilgamesh can become self-aware. Now, here's the thing you need to understand. Enkidu has accomplished the impossible. Someone with a tremendous amount of power has become passive to power, has fallen in love with Enkidu. When you fall in love, not with someone's looks, not with someone's emotions. Now imagine if you have this complex about you. You go out on a date, but you're very selective as to who you want to go out with. You never go out with someone who's whole, who's intact. You go out with people who are broken, so they can sit you down and tell you the sob story. Let me tell you what my dad did. Let me tell you what my mom did. Let me tell you what happened to me, A, B, C, D. And then you sit there and you say, well, you know, the way you get out of this particular dilemma is you do A, B, C, D. Okay? You choose the people you're with because of their emotions or the way they think. Now remember, the intellect, the way you think, is very simple. When you are young and confused, your intellect is there to figure out how to remove these confusing emotions, intense emotions from you. Your intellect is not autonomous. It's not independent. You just don't want to feel anymore. Okay? So Gilgamesh has fallen in love with a man who is whole, intact. He's not broken by sex. He's not broken by society. He's not broken by his father or his mother. He just understands that life is a crappy experience, regardless of who and what you are. And that is the teaching he wants to give to Gilgamesh. Because Enkidu has offended the gods play a magic trick. Enkidu gets sick. As he is laying on his deathbed, he has a dream. He finds himself in the house of dust, sand, and darkness. He's in the world of Hades. He wakes up from the dream and says to Gilgamesh, I have had this dream. Now, one of the things you need to understand about dreams in the ancient world is, if you have watched the movie The Matrix, it belongs to the world of Morpheus. Dreams are profoundly, profoundly important, especially if you are working with someone, i.e., a teacher. What's going to happen when you're working with a teacher is that for the first maybe 2, 3, 4, 5 years, that teacher is the very centerpiece of every single dream that you will have. And whenever you have those dreams, it's best, it's to your advantage to share those dreams to the person, with the person you're working with. You will never be able to interpret the dream on your own. No student is ever able to think well, to feel well, to read well, and to act well. They're like dough, they're like clay. They must be shaped and formed by the person they're working with. Okay? Now, one morning, Gilgamesh wakes up to make some coffee and maybe bagel and cream cheese for his buddy Enkidu. But Enkidu doesn't wake up. And pushes Enkidu a little bit, remains unmoved. Enkidu is dead. The only thing that had given Gilgamesh meaning and purpose in life was the presence of Enkidu. Now that Enkidu is dead, Gilgamesh has been hollowed from within. He has no place to go. If you have watched the movie The Ten Commandments with Charlton Heston, regardless of what you may think about his relationship to the NRA, he's got a great voice, great looking man, great actor, really. So there is a scene in the Ten Commandments. He has come to realize that he doesn't have the Pharaoh's blood within him, that his parents, who were Hebrews, put him in this basket floating on water. He was taken by the Pharaoh's sister, raised by the Pharaoh's sister, believed that he actually came out of this woman, until he comes to realize that, no, he's a Hebrew. Imagine you're a 20 or a 30-year-old man, you've always believed yourself to be a prince, and all of a sudden someone comes and tells you, no, that's not your tradition. You are a slave. You are a Hebrew. And you believe in this God. You have this awareness now. And it's so potent and it's so intense that you can't just pretend. Gilgamesh has tasted what real love looks like. He can't go back to being a prince. He can't go back to Uruk and simply have sex with people. He can't go back to Uruk and simply drink and smoke and have a good time. Enkidu taught him, showed him what good conversation looks like, what beauty looks like. The things that Enkidu gave him did not diminish with time. They only intensified. My parents, my father is 90, almost. My mom is 80. I've been in Oakland for about 20 years. For the first 15 years, every weekend I would drive to Roseville. And then we would have gatherings every weekend, without exception. 20, 30 people would come. And the place we would gather at, my parents' house. That's our home. Now, my brother and I talk about this quite often, that my father is old. Soon he will die. That's just the way things work. Once he dies, then my mom, who's been married to this man for about 60 years, she will be grief-stricken. And us kids will do the best we can, to entertain her, to make sure she's never alone. But eventually she too will die. Now here's the thing you need to understand. My sister's house can never replace my parents' house. My brother's house can never replace my parents' house. Once my parents go, this hub, this sun that created this warmth for this community for about 40, 50, 60 years will be there no more. When I go to my brother's house, it'll be nothing but casual chit-chat. When I go to my sister's house, the same chit-chat. The warmth that we used to get from my parents' house will be there no more. Their house will eventually be sold. And all you will have are memories. Gilgamesh lives with memories now. And you can't touch the memories. You want to find something down here as beautiful, as perfect, as complete as Enkidu. Tragically, of course, for Gilgamesh, Enkidu showed him something that no human being should ever be shown. That if you really want to be happy, if you want perfection, if you want beauty, it's inside you. No one can give it to you. You can't find it out there. And Gilgamesh has come to realize this through Enkidu. Do you know how devastating it is? That you know that what you're looking for lives within you. I mean, you know it to your core. You also know you need to get married. You also know you want to have children. You also know that once in a while you want to be around your friends. At the same time, you also know that despite wanting all these things, having them perhaps, you will never, ever, ever be happy. They will never bring about contentment. Moments of joy, yes. But you got married and you had kids for political reasons. The Greek poet Pindar once remarked that if it wasn't for old age, no one would get married, especially men. You get married because you want someone to take you to Kaiser, make you soup when you're sick. Now, for those of you who can't fully grasp the gravity of this particular scene, Gilgamesh holding Enkidu in his arms and wailing and screaming and crying, because the only thing that had given him meaning and purpose in life is there no more. I'll share with you a story. Around the 1990s, we had a friend, he's in Los Angeles now, they moved. He had two sons. Like me, he was an immigrant, he came here, Sacramento. He was a taxi driver for a while. He was a political prisoner back home. So they had two kids, two sons. One evening or one day, he goes to pick up his son from the basketball court, and they're driving home, and This kid asked his father, is there food home at the house? Did mom make some food? He says, yeah. She made ABCD. He says, nah, can you take me to a round table? And of course, his father said, of course we can. Screw the mom. Screw this, her cooking. Let's go to a round table. You and I will sit and have some food. On the way to round table, all of a sudden, he passes out. They rush the Kaiser. By the time they get there, he's pronounced dead. His brother calls me and says, Amir, we need 5 people to go to the mortuary and wash the body. Can you be one of those 5 members? So sure, why not? So we go to the mortuary. We are the only people who are occupying this huge space. There are all these plastic white beds. So there is this body of a 17-year-old, naked. There are 5 buckets of scented water, 5 sponges, and so we begin to wash the body. I'm still very young, so as I'm washing this body, I'm saying, why is he dead? It's a very, very intimate experience. It's you and the corpse. And you haven't yet grown callous. And you want to know where life has gone, why he is dead. Where is the justice in all of this? And so the body is washed. He's wrapped in this white cloth. And then he is taken to the gravesite. And then there is the mother. The father is very stoic. He was just standing like this, and he didn't cry at all. He just watched the body being put in the ground. The mother, on the other hand, she screamed and she wailed and she cried for hours. And the point I'm trying to make is that imagine a mother having lost a son or a daughter, something that has grown inside her. There is this poet, گلی که خون بدادم پیچ و تابش ز آب دیدگونم دادم آبش به درگاه الهی کی روابی گل از ما دیگری گیره گلابش. That if you want to know how your parents raised you through pain, worry, sacrifice, and tears, it is true that all of us are ungrateful because we're not completely aware of the pain and the sacrifice that goes into raising kids. But that's what parents do. And eventually what happens? What happened to this particular woman? Life or the world simply took this kid away from her without her permission. And she's now devastated. Okay? You need to understand the gravity of devastation. Depression, loneliness, confusion, anger that lives inside Gilgamesh. When you are codependent, and if that codependency, if that thing is the very hub of your life, and that hub has depth, maturity, wisdom inside it, in one sense, consider yourself to be immensely lucky, because you will continue to live, but your expectations will be very low for what life will offer you from that point on. No one will ever come close to what you used to have. That's a great freedom to have. Okay? Since Gilgamesh got a taste of something eternal, immortal, transcendental, he says to himself, there has to be something out there. There has to be another teacher out there who can show me, guide me, give me another taste of wisdom. And this is where the solitary, the spiritual quest takes place. You're not after pleasures of the body. You're not after emotions connected to the body. You're not after information connected to the physical life. You want something that you can see, touch, taste, smell, or touch.